What's up, everyone? Kevin Allen here, aka the Geek, and I am back for another Geeks Vegas Lines, NFL Week 16 betting angles, and daily fantasy football breakdowns podcast. I've got Season Long Says with me. What's up, Season Long Says?
All right, baby. I'm ready to do this. Week 16. This is all the teams are still playing for something, so all of the players are likely going to be in play. This is still one of the best Week 16s I can remember in a long time.
A lot of meaningful games and some meaningless games. What's going on, John? Statsational?
What's going on, man? I'm just recovering for some soccer action this afternoon.
I was just telling you, you got to be a real degenerate to be betting on that un-American sport.
Nah, man, that's a global phenomenon, man.
You can watch that shit.
It's the worst sport in the world unless you're betting on it. And when you're betting on it, it's a ton of fun.
Let me tell you something. Every sport is the worst sport in the world without a betting interest.
Talk about a degenerate.
And that's what we're all about here on the Geeks Vegas Lines. We are giving you a way to watch these games with a rooting interest. How does that happen? You've got your fantasy football team. You've got your DFS lineups. You've got your bets. Now, all it takes to put a bet on is to, click a couple buttons on your phone. You got your bets out there, which reminds me, we're sponsored by DFS Army's Beat the Bookie betting service, where you get handicap picks, models for every sport, back-tested, and a team of sports gambling pros, not just giving out picks, the fire picks. There's no one named Cowboy Steve. There's no one named Vegas Tony. None of that. John, Ryan, Anthony, smart guys, hedge fund people, quantitative analysts, model builders, long-time winning sports gamblers who teach you the process of betting on sports, why, what to look for, all these amazing things. So go check out dfsarmy.com, click on Beat the Bookie, use promo code BTB for 20% off. There we go.
All right. Nice. So let's get it. Yeah, so, I mean, that's what you do. And also, while you're on that subject, John and I do a series of podcasts that give out free information and teaching people how to become a better sports wager, a plus EV sports wager. And we'll talk more about that at the end as well. But we're going to be doing another one on Friday, so people could tune in, see if they like the content, and they do, then have them sign up at that point. I mean, we give a lot of the content out for free in hopes that they'll come over, check us out, and then really dive into the models. And if they want to have some fun sports gambling, man, I mean, there's no better way than to having a pro in your hip pocket while you're doing it.
There we go. And here we are for Week 16, NFL. And the biggest thing, and one of the things we were talking about off the air, we're getting to the last couple of weeks of the season. Now, there's a couple things to keep in mind, not just from a sports betting, but also from the DFS side of things, which is, this is the last time we're going to get to use some of these players for a year. So, like, if you had a hunch about someone or another, even if they might not be in the greatest of matchups, you're like, hey, man, it's my last chance to get a little Dreezy action. You want to get it going. And the other thing we were talking about off air was teams with stuff to play for. We're going to focus on that a little bit on this breakdown as well. We're going to focus on which teams have something to play for, which teams have nothing to play for, and which teams have a reason to rest players. Right now, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot to worry about, but we'll get into it on a team-by-team basis, try to figure that stuff out. So, Alan, take us away. First game of the slate.
Yeah, the first game that I wanted to talk about, John, was Jacksonville is going to go to Atlanta. Atlanta is laying the full 46.5 total. Now, what was interesting about Atlanta is they are one of the bottom teams in the league, but they've beat some of the best teams in the league. I cannot figure this team out. I'm curious to what your model says, to what where the money's going. I mean, Atlanta putting a whooping on San Francisco twice. I mean, or New Orleans twice. Sorry, in San Francisco. It's I'm interested to see what's going on here.
It's a curious team, right? Because this was a team that obviously the expectations were quite a bit higher than what the results have been so far this year. So my model has this game pretty much right where the market has it at 7 points. So I think it's a fair line there. Just let me look at the total that I have. I've got 47 on
So it's
on my total, so which is fairly close to where they're at. So they've priced this one correctly, I believe. If we look at where the money's coming in, I don't think it's a surprise here because of Atlanta coming off that big win against San Francisco. If you are still alive in any survivor pools, that potentially was a game that knocked a few people out. But Atlanta's getting 83% of the money and about 60% of the tickets. So not only are they getting a higher percentage of ticket action, but it's also the larger ticket sizes are being bet on Atlanta here. The total, we're looking at the under as a huge play here. 96% of the cash coming in on the underside. So, yeah, two teams that are out of it. But as you guys said, I'm not seeing anything where we're having any major participants here sitting in these games. Also, before we even get too deep into it, this is and that's sort of the motif here of, or if you will, of what this podcast is all about. So we do talk about the Vegas lines. You really want to be paying attention this week and especially next week to the line, because the line is going to tell you in a lot of instances who exactly is playing. I literally just got off the phone with my dad. He's in his girlfriend actually is in a survivor pool. I come from a family of degenerates. So she's still alive in one of her survivor pools. It's like a 10,000 person pool. There's like 100 people left, and he's asking me for some advice. And he was asking me that question, like, well, who's going to be sitting this week and whatnot? I said, you've got to look at the lines. It's built into the line. So pay attention to the lines, especially these last couple of weeks. That's going to tell you, which quarterback's sitting, which quarterback's not. If there's a line on the game and, you're in a situation where, well, is this quarterback's, I don't know. I think they're going to bench this quarterback. If they put a line on the game, then it's pretty much status quo. The information that you have is what the market has. Once they take that line off the board, that's when you'll know something's changing. Very typically, it's going to be one of the star players, usually a quarterback. So keep that in mind for these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's really smart advice, and I think that's something we should reiterate on Beat the Bookie podcast as well. Great indicators when the line goes off and what that actually means. Geek, I know what you and I were talking about Atlanta a lot last week, and I was considering the foolishly benching Julio Jones. Thank God I listened to both of you and played him. Can we go back to him again? And who else do you like in this game?
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite games on the slate. From the Atlanta side, I love everything to do with Atlanta at home. Listen, they're playing in front of the home crowd. They're a much better team than Jacksonville, and the Jaguars are not a good defensive team this year at all. So there's a lot of things going for the Falcons side of this game. As a plus, the offense is now a little more focused with Calvin Ridley out of the mix. So yes, I love Matt Ryan. You got Hoops, Austin Hooper. You got Julio Jones. You've even got Russell Gage as a possible cheapie to throw in there. I love everything about it. But the one player that may be flying on the radar, and I'm still not sure salary-wise if I love it, but I definitely love the matchup for him, is Devonta Freeman. And here's the deal with Freeman. He's getting all of the touches at this point. Atlanta has no reason to rest him. Maybe you might think they have a reason to play Hill a little bit more, see what they have in him. But that's not what they did last week. As a matter of fact, last week, Hill only got a couple of touches. Freeman got almost all of the snaps. So even though Freeman's coming off of a bad game against an opponent in San Francisco that no one would have expected him to do anything but have a bad game against, now he's got the Jaguars. This is the team that Derrick Henry went for 3 touchdowns and 180 yards against just a couple weeks ago. This is a team that gets torched by running backs most weeks. So Devonta Freeman, interesting in a week where the running back position is a little bit weird. On the Jaguar side, I think if Chark is out again, there's maybe some interest. D.D. Westbrook is dead to me, but he's dead to me.
Yeah, I don't know why the fantasy community wants him to be a thing. You notice that too, John? The fantasy Twitter is they love that guy. I just never understood it.
Well, your first impression sometimes, and you kind of stick with it. So if you make a good first impression, people will sort of look past some of your faults that may come out later in time. He was so hyped up before the season, and we had all this talk about how he was connecting with Foles, and I think two things happen: either people are quick to jump off the train, or we get so bought into, and I don't know why one happens or the other, but we get so caught up and buy into the hype sometimes that we don't. It takes us a long time to get off that hype train.
Yeah, and the last guy I want you to talk about, Geek, is someone that I saw you pick up in all of your leagues and play him.
Conley.
Chris Conley, man. I mean, how do you know?
Are you saying that you're upset that I beat your wife's team in our league together on the back of Chris Conley's incredible performance, having the balls to play him in round 2 of the playoffs?
And that's what it takes sometimes. It takes stones,
You got to have the stones, man. I told everybody in DFS Army to play Chris Conley last week as an all play, 3,600. He's getting the DJ Shark looks. We got a little bit lucky at the end there, but I only like Conley if Shark is out. I do like the Jaguars offense as a potential game stack with this game, but Atlanta's defense has not been terrible. And Atlanta's been Jaguars have been kind of bad. So I do give Gardner Minshew a shot here of getting, of finding a player to have a quality fantasy game. I think people are going to want to play Leonard Fournette again, and that's fine. Although I'm kind of like Dede Westbrook out of Leonard Fournette this season as well. It's one of these, at some point I get that he gets all the volume, but he never does anything. It's never enough. It's never 30 pointer or 2 all season with all that volume. It's kind of upsetting, but hate to say it, but yeah, Fournette will still be in play here. But none of these Jaguars are jumping off the page as must plays for me. I like him more as game stack pieces.
All right, 11 minutes in, 1 down. We're only about by this pace on a 3.5-hour podcast.
Well, that was a good game. So
yeah, you know me.
Crap.
I bust your chops only out of love. A game that I'm very interested in, John, is Baltimore going into Cleveland. Cleveland getting 10 points at home. The over-under for this one is 48.5. I have a take on this game that I'm just curious if your take of my take is that this may seem like a lot of points, but obviously this would be about 16 in Baltimore. Baltimore doesn't want to have to play for anything in Week 17. I mean, I've made up this narrative in my head that they're just going to go ahead and crush. Cleveland's without their best player, without Myles Garrett. They're kind of in turmoil right now. I could see Baltimore just stepping on the gas and just blowing this one open. I'm all in on Baltimore on the road here.
I think a lot of people will be, and as I pull it up, that is that's where the money's going. So 84% of it and 88% of the tickets. I mean, I think certainly if you guys have been watching this podcast this year, you should start getting a better feel for where the money's coming in. And certainly the guys over at Beat the Bookie have a good feel for it, because we do look at that sort of thing. And it should just be something in the back of your head. Just, when we're betting on games, where's the money coming in? Where's the public going to like? And obviously here, the public is not going to like Cleveland. For all the reasons you said. There's just huge disappointment all year, and Baltimore's just been as good as it gets. And the thing with Baltimore, like you said, we get the potential where they have no problem blowing teams out. Like they just don't take the gas. They don't take the foot off the gas all that often when they've got that lead. And when you have a running attack that rips off yardage at the pace some people's passing games do. This is like the old Nebraska, playing Nebraska in the 1990s, option. I'm not saying they're running the same type of offense, but you'd be like, they're scoring just as quick as a pro style offense.
Yeah, those were monster teams. Those running
the monster teams, and you're doing it with 10 and 20-yard runs. Baltimore has the capability here to do the same thing, which is ripping off huge chunks of yardage. While you say, normally you would say a rushing type of team. They're going to play a little bit ball control and control the clock, and it's going to be a little tighter game. Baltimore's just got the ability with Jackson to not only run the ball, but run the ball with the quarterback, and then of course mix in a few deep passes here and again, and then it comes out to 200 yards of rushing, 220 yards of passing. And they put 40 points on the board. So, yeah, the potential is there for the blowout, and I think that's what everyone is looking at. It's real tough to bet Cleveland. I think a lot of people are going to have a hard time doing that, and we're seeing that reflected by the amount of action that we're getting in that game on the Baltimore side. And then if we look at the total, you're pretty split here down the middle on the over-under, slightly more money coming in on the underside of this game. So, yeah, I mean, I think pretty much predictably, everyone likes Baltimore, and on the total, it could go either way because, like we said, Baltimore could put 40 up on their own, or this game just remains tight and Cleveland doesn't score. So the only way this game goes under is really Cleveland under with Baltimore. If you're looking at that narrative, is Cleveland has to score less than 10 points. They got to stay in the single digits, and then you get a cover, I think, and the under. So if it goes that way, otherwise you're going to get a game where Baltimore's up in the 30. If they cover, they're going to have to be up in the 30s, and Cleveland's going to have to put 2 or 3 touchdowns on the board for the game to go over. So that's the different narratives you have to look at when you're looking at this game from a DFS standpoint.
All right, Geek. Our last chance in DFS to probably play Lamar Jackson here. I mean, if they win, even if it's not by covering the spread, sure enough, I don't see Lamar Jackson playing more than a quarter next week against Pittsburgh. So just load him up. This is the last time I get to play him.
It's a little spendy this week. Both of the sites have Lamar Jackson. Both of the sites. There are plenty of sites, but everybody has him the same. FanDuel, DraftKings, Fantasy Draft. At least 1,000 above the next cheapest quarterback. So there is a price to pay for the floor that Lamar Jackson brings you. But we have seen that the Ravens, and I've said this all year, will put it on a team that is losing. They're not going to slow down. They'll put it on you. So just like they did to the Jets last week, 5 touchdowns, 42 points. He went crazy. We could see more of that. The same. He's going to be super chalk. I don't think he's a must play because of the salary level. But I do think if you're not playing him, you're pretty much giving up a 30-point game, which is the most likely thing. And the only way he doesn't get there is if Mark Ingram pretty much puts up a bunch of touchdowns. So really good spot for Lamar. Love him. Love the spot for. I think you could actually play him with stacks. I think you could probably play Mark Andrews, who's finally not questionable. I mean, wow. And also Marquise Brown, who's also not questionable. Like, what the hell is going on? Has the world come to an end? So finally healthy, these guys. I don't love any of them per se in terms of the secondary pieces, but I do love Lamar and stacking him up all day long. Nothing of interest on the Cleveland side. I'll take a pass.
Zero, not even like Chubb, no one.
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing of interest.
John, do you agree with that? That's not any.
That doesn't mean, to be clear, John, that doesn't mean that Landry or Odell Beckham can't have a good game. I'm just not interested.
Yeah, I'm not interested either. Not even Chubb, just because of the Hunt situation over there. So yeah, I'm just not excited on that side of the game. The Baltimore defense has been underrated as well, just because all the focus has been on just how good Jackson's been, but their defense has been really, really good. I would say one of the top 5 defenses in the league. So, and like we've seen what they've done to some of these bad teams is just, they step on the gas, they don't get off it, which is great for fantasy, great for Lamar Jackson, fantasy numbers. But what they've also done is continue to keep teams down. And you're looking for those garbage time points. You're not getting a lot of it against them. So I don't like the Cleveland side of this game.
John, what's the Brooklyn Goomba version of that? Is that like putting your foot on the neck after the guy's down?
Yeah, stepping on the guy's neck. Yeah, exactly.
Step on him while he's down. Like,
throat.
No,
okay.
I've had enough.
I have a buddy who likes to use the phrase like kick him in the throat.
Kick him in the throat.
Kick him in the throat.
That's what they're doing. They're kicking him in the throat. They kicked my Jets in the throat last week.
They like to send a message. I mean, that's just part of a mentality of a team. And, look, it showed. They're best team in the NFL right now, and they're a favorite to win the Super Bowl if you're even by all the Vegas odds. All right, John. Carolina, complete disaster. They're going to start Will Grier this week. Will Grier in college looked like a pretty decent quarterback. Was terrible in the preseason though. So I lost.
How much should we take from that? Really, that's a narrative that's floating around. Do we need to? It was the PFL's worst rated quarterback. Does that mean anything?
Yeah. Well, I don't know about PFL worst and rated and all that kind of stuff. I mean, just from the games I saw, Will Grier didn't look good in the preseason. Now, again, what I talked to you about, Geek, is that I said that he could have improved this whole year and look good again. But anyway, Carolina going into Indy laying 6.5, total 46. I don't trust Will Grier on the road. John, what do the bettors think?
Well, I think a lot of the money was coming in, so it's a little hard to tell before the Grier news. So we do have more money coming in on Carolina here. So it is 65-35 on the Carolina side. I think this is about a I'm going to say that it's about a 3-point differential between Allen and Greer in this game. 3, maybe 3.5. I would have had the game right around 3.5. I think if this was Allen in there. So you're getting the 3. So it's built into the line. Now the question is, a lot of people haven't seen him play, so it's going to be real tough from a DFS standpoint to get in too heavy on some of these Carolina players. Although I know on FanDuel, I think FanDuel's been screwing up the pricing on DJ Moore for weeks. So that's probably still something that people are going to have to look at. If you just look at the total real quick, that's there's not much on either side there. So we're looking 50-50 on that side. So yeah, I mean, the Colts, not a team that I generally love to go against or even take. It's like Colt games I become numb to, and I just kind of pass them over. But you can run on this Carolina team, so there could be some options there. And in the passing game, I just don't know if I can trust either side.
Geek, now you just got excited a minute ago about the possibility of Greer. Is it because you think he's good, or is that you just think that there's no one really knows and that everyone has a take on Twitter? What got you so excited about Greer?
No one knows, and that's what I'm saying. No one knows, right? And so then a narrative starts going around, and then it's repeated everywhere. Like you hear it on over here, and then all of a sudden every other thing, every other piece of content, well, it was the worst rated in the preseason. You will hear that a million times if you're listening to breakdowns pods about this guy and this game. So whenever I start to hear a narrative like that is repeated a lot, I start to think, I want to do the opposite. Yeah, I just like doing the opposite of it just for that reason. Now, I'll feed you a narrative, John. Here's my narrative. Every time it seems like, or frequently, when we get one of these debutante quarterbacks, they like have a decent game. And it's a phenomenon that's been going on for years. Like the automatic thought is I always have the same thought. Rookie quarterback, let's target defense against. He's going to do shit. He's going to be overwhelmed. It does happen. It probably happens more often than not. But every once in a while, you get a David Blow coming out, and we know he sucks, but somehow he comes out and he has a great, and I'm going to name a few of these. Give me a few, because this is an important point. It's not just Brandon Allen, David Blow, just this year. Kyle Allen when he had his first game. We could talk about not that Bengals guy, but some of the other guys. Driscoll when he came out for the Lions on that first game. Let's go back a year. Those quarterbacks that were coming out for the 49ers last year, Beathard and whatever.
Nick Mullins
and Beathard. And these guys would have a good game. And then they would start to tail off. But that first game, they surprised. And why is that phenomenon happen? I don't know. Right? I have no idea. But it happens frequently enough that it's kind of worth saying in your tournament, in your tournament stack, saying, you know what, let me just rather than focus my whole week on this guy's garbage, this guy sucks and he's going to be terrible. What if I took a little bit of Will Greer to DJ Moore action? It is a pretty cheap stack to get involved with, and probably no one's going to use it. And what if it's another one of those phenomenons where the first game out, this rookie guy, and yeah, Brandon Allen's another one. How about what's his name? The other guy for the Broncos now, Drew Lock. So these guys have come out and had good games, and it's like
that's the best example right there. I think that Drew Lock, everyone thought like, hey, he's not good. He went in the second round, and I think that's the best narrative example.
It's all bullshit narratives, but I can. What's wrong with the Blow narrative? The guy puts up 20. The point was, weird shit happens in the NFL. And yes, we all expect Will Greer to suck, and we're going to hear this narrative all week long. He was terrible. I don't care. You know what? I don't expect him to be good, but when I play a GPP lineup, it's first or last. I don't give a fuck. So that's something I'm going to play. But more importantly on this game, as an overall, when you're talking about now not dicking around with Millie Maker stacks, but rather, hey, I'm making one lineup for this $150 60-man contest, right? And I really like to play a lock at running back in Christian McCaffrey, but is he a lock? And I will say there's risk with Christian McCaffrey if this offense becomes very inefficient, which could happen with a rookie like a Nathan Peterman last year with the Bills, who threw 5 interceptions. Shit happens. That's crazy. when you're paying 10K plus for a player in DFS purposes, you basically are trying to purchase away any risk that the guy is going to put up a complete dud. Because when he does, and if he does, or if he doesn't smash, you're dead. It's just like LeBron James in NBA last night. When you paid up for him and he only put up 40 points, you were dead. Like there was no getting it back. There's no getting that, but you're dead. I'm done. Right? That's what happens when you pay up for a guy and they don't deliver. So there is fear I have. And John, I would love your take on Christian McCaffrey here. And I know the narrative is, well, last year, Kyle Allen started and we all didn't play him. And then he had a great game, in this exact same situation. But Kyle Allen's Kyle Allen. This is a different guy. What if are we secure, John, with Christian McCaffrey, knowing that this unknown quantity at quarterback is going to be in play?
I am very comfortable fading McCaffrey, right? So we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks. Now he's still giving you really good points here, but in this situation with the quarterback, now I know teams key on McCaffrey anyway, and he still gets his because now he's good and he's a high volume guy, right? Both passing and in the running game, he's going to get you 15 carries, 10 to 12 targets. And then he punches a couple in the end zone, and it's just like, it's always the McCaffrey show. He's going to get you for a couple of big ones. But I keep getting worried here that they're in a situation where they're not playing for this year. He is the most used running back in the league. Why continue to pound Christian McCaffrey? Why continue? And if the game, not that this game is definitely going to what if this game gets ugly?
Reggie Bonifant.
I just think there's too much risk at that price for me.
John,
certainly if I'm playing one lineup, I'm not playing McCaffrey.
Well, that's where I was going with it.
Is McCaffrey going for any records or anything like that? Any reason to keep him on the field?
Yeah, I think he is.
The Chris Johnson yards from scrimmage record?
Yeah, I think he's got a yards, but I think he's going to get that. I don't know how far away he is. I don't think that's something that he needs to be overused to get. I don't know. And I don't know what kind of contract incentives he has or anything like that potentially could be triggered.
He is holding out they're going to give him a new contract the day the season ends, or else he's going to be the next holdout. There's no question. He's not going to continue racking up this kind of workload on his rookie contract. He's not going to do it. So
he would be stupid too. Very stupid too. But that's the point. And by the way, he's very comfortable fading. I want to be clear on this. That doesn't mean that you can't play Christian McCaffrey, and it definitely doesn't mean that he can't have a monster game. A lot of us faded him last year when Kyle Allen was brought out on week 17 just to play, and he ends up going out and with the exact same logic of why would they play this guy? This was the last game of the season. I had the same thought, and he goes off for 40 fantasy points. So remember, the opposing team is kind of on the quit also, and sometimes when teams don't give a fuck anymore, and we'll talk about that when we get to the Miami breakdown. The running games do really well because, I'm giving it 95, not 100%. And that really helps the running game. Speaking of which, on the flip side of this game, you've got some interesting pieces because, again, the Panthers are really, really bad against the run. Marlon Mack not getting 100% of the snaps last week, not even getting like 60% of them. Didn't do a whole lot, but could be worked back a little bit more into this offense this week. He's got only 11 carries. He's a yardage and touchdowns guy. If he doesn't score a touchdown, he's going to murder your lineup. Simple as that. If he doesn't get you 100 yards and a touchdown, you're dead. But, which is why I don't like it in cash games generally, a guy like Marlon Mack. But he's in a good spot against the Carolina defense that's been really bad versus the run. And, of course, maybe T.Y. Hilton will be back. So there might be some interesting pieces on the Colts side here just to think about. And they're at home, which I like.
All right, John, game of the week. Can't wait to watch Cincinnati go to Miami. Miami, a 1-point favorite at home. Total's 47. Are people actually going to bet on this game? I mean, because, I consider myself mostly degenerate and then somewhat, plus EV. But I just can't imagine putting any money on this game unless I was a real sicko or thought I had a real edge to it. So what is it?
It's actually the guys who are going to bet it outside of fans of the teams are going to be the people who have an edge. It's the degenerates who bet the big popular games.
All right.
Not that the sharp guys don't, but there's the reason that you see more action on the nationally televised game is because it's nationally televised and people want to bet on what they watch. Nobody wants to watch this game. No one's going to bet on it.
All right.
So it's more of a degen move to bet on every single primetime game.
That makes sense.
The degenerate scale is, hey, I'm about to watch Jets Ravens. It's Monday night. Let me put a bet on this shit. Whereas the sharp better's like, I'm not interested in watching Cincinnati and Miami, but my model's telling me Miami should be favored here. So I'm betting.
I've been doing this for a long time, and I don't go to the bar as often as I used to, but I still go out and watch sometimes I go out and watch these games at the bar, and I'll be the only, like, this will be a game where I'm going to be like, hey, can you turn the Cincinnati Miami game on here? And everyone's like, why? And they'll have the same thing. And I'm like, well, I bet the game. Yeah, and then nowadays, people are like, oh, you must be a real degenerate. I'm like, no, all the degenerates are over there watching the big national game.
They bet that one too, guys.
But now I think that with sports wagering becoming a lot more mainstream and fantasy, like everyone's grandmother plays fantasy, it's way more acceptable than it was in the 1990s or even the early 2000s.
Oh, yeah, they know the sports bar knows to have every game on for fantasy purposes alone. But where are we? Cincinnati, Miami, exciting game.
Well, John was just going to tell us anything else about the money, the line movement.
Yeah, the money, the money. I have Cincinnati slightly better than Miami here, which I know people are going to be surprised at, just considering the records. And now all of a sudden Miami is, Miami's favored, which no one thought a few weeks ago that was going to be possible. Miami was the team that was going to go 0-16, and they've proven to play really hard here down the stretch. So, again, I'll say this a million times: the players don't dump, the coaches don't dump. The front office might, and what the product that they put out on the field might not be very good. But once you get on the field, those players are playing for jobs, and not everyone's signed to multi-year, multi-million-dollar contracts. The overwhelming majority of guys on that field are trying to get back in the league next year. So, keep that in mind. Those guys don't dump, and you can't play this sport half-ass. Otherwise, you're going to get hurt. So, and those guys know that. So, every team goes out there and tries. It's just a matter of the quality of players that they may put on the field may not be that very good. So, anyway, with that said, the Cincinnati is actually catching 73% of. Hold on. I was looking at the total on that. So I thought that was a little unusual. Yeah, the money's about 50-50, but then the over is catching 73% of the money there, which is not shocking. I think a lot of people like the over in this game. So just want to quickly just look over at my model there and see where I have it. The games are just not in a great order this week because they moved the times around a little bit. But this is a game that, according to my model, we've got some potential there for some. There could be some fantasy interest in this game.
Geek, the player that I'm zeroing in on and was my favorite running back in the year he came out was Joe Mixon. You know how much of a truther I've been of him, and he has just looked great in the last month plus. It's just looking at the slate. He's a guy that I'm getting into most of my DFS lineups this week.
You ain't a crooks on, you're just a mix on. Thank you.
I like that.
Joe Mixon, almost 30 touches each of the last 2 weeks. Where has this been all my life? What the hell's going on? All of a sudden, the Bengals are not playing as terrible. Well, they're still pretty bad. But I think the most exciting thing about the mix and carries, John, last week was it was in a losing effort against the Patriots. It wasn't like they were ahead. They were just pounding that rock. They didn't give a fuck. And that is glorious. So this is a week where DFS-wise, I found it very, 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 that's a 3 very difficult to figure out running backs that I have any kind of confidence in. But you have to be excited about all of the workload that Mixon has gotten the last few weeks. Now he's got a much better matchup. Sure, it's on the road, but it's against Miami, who just got destroyed by Saquon Barkley, who hadn't done anything all season until that game. So I'm expecting big things from Mixon. Both sides of this game are just exciting from a fantasy point of view because both these defenses really don't give a fuck. And you see it when you talked about players wanting to play next year. There's just a difference between a guy going 95% and a guy going 100%. There's that little bit of fire. There's no Ray Lewis on the on the Dolphins defense, like, let's get this motherfucker. There's nobody doing that. Like, you know what I'm saying? There's no leader who's doing that.
He was kind of crazy when he was.
Yeah, but if Ray Lewis, if he's on your team, there's no way you're not playing 100%. You're like, I don't care if you're 0-17. There is nothing like that going on the Dolphins right now. So I observed it. You're like, these guys are playing hard, but it's like 95%. There's that little bit of all right. Like when Saquon would bounce one for the outside, those are watching the tape, and Saquon would kind of bounce one, and you see the Miami guys just kind of like slow up. All right, do one of these with their hand, like that. Like you don't see an NFL defenseman, doing one of those, and it's like, oh, there it is. Like, I'm not running. I'm not going full blast for this guy. You know what I'm saying? So that's what the team is all about. Doesn't mean they can't play well at home, in front of the home crowd. All those things can happen, but it does bode well for both of these offenses. Dalton, how about my man, John Ross? No one even thinking of Ross. Remember I said it. John, on the wall. Who won the bet last week?
You did.
It's fucking A.
No. I'm sorry.
Wait, what was the bet? I don't remember. I told you I forget it.
The bet was
what was the bet? Ertz?
Points per dollar, and they all did really well.
Okay, all right. So
and I say that because I came in last.
Wait, what was the choices? What happened?
You had Ertz.
Okay, John.
Kyle had Kittle, and I had Waller.
Oh man, they were all good. You're right.
They were all really
very
good.
Yeah.
So yeah. I vote on. We don't actually pay off that bet, but
all wins. Actually, Higbee. Whoever said Higbee.
Should
have been the right one.
Higbee.
We should have. All right. So anyway, well, yeah, that's right. So, but back to these guys. John Ross. How about Tyler Boyd? Let's go back to Boyd. John Ross the third. Sure. He could be a GPP interesting play. I might have to play him on one of my teams. No one's thinking about John Ross. He's forgotten. Devontae Parker, of course, for the Dolphins. No Laird. Stop.
It's over, Johnny.
The Laird thing is done. Leave it to Davis Maddock and Pete Vetrazad or those dudes. No more Laird. Enough. Stop. But both quarterbacks in play as well. I like this game. Stack it up. The whole deal. No one has anything to play for. No one gives a fuck. But the defenses don't care. So we could just get a lot of offense. It could be like a Pro Bowl game.
Hey, that sounds good to me, man.
What do you think of my John Ross call, man? John Ross.
No, I like it. I actually, often when you guys are going back and forth, I'm making notes, and John Ross is the name I put down here. So it's on my list amongst guys I'm going to squeeze into my lineup. I like that a lot. But you don't necessarily think you have to stack him with Dalton, which I think is interesting too. So
not a must, but Dalton just hasn't had a big game. I mean, my concern is they just will run the shit out of it to Mixon, and none of these wide receivers will do much. So, that's the concern. That's why Mixon is the focal point for me on that side. And on the flip side, on the Dolphin side, I definitely like Fitzpatrick to Parker again. I'll go right back to it.
All right. John, next game I want to talk about is Pittsburgh is going to go visit the Jets at the Meadowlands. The Jets are getting 3 at home. I like that. Total 38.5. I'm curious where the money's going. My initial thought was that no one's going to want to take the Jets, and I think I'm going to put a unit down on the Jets this week, getting the field goal.
All right, interesting. That seems like a sharp play, right? So we've got the money's about 50-50, but overwhelming amount of tickets are on Pittsburgh. So I think the sharp side of this game is probably the Jets. I like that side. It's not going to be one of my plays this week, but if I was just betting with my heart, not my model, I would take the Jets here, or my brain, I should say, not my heart. I could care less about the Jets, but yeah, it's interesting. I think on the surface, I think what you're looking at, and I thought this too, was like, hey, this Pittsburgh team could go to the playoffs, and the Jets have been kind of crappy. Like, it's only 3. I think that's how a lot of the public is going to look at that game. I think if you're in an office pool, you're going to see, 70-80% of the bets will be Pittsburgh, something like that. So that's why I think this line's a little intriguing. I would have had it at 3.5. So I think it's not that the line is off. I just think that I think the public is going to look at these two teams and look at them totally differently. I think Pittsburgh has come on here and they've taken advantage of the weaker schedule down the stretch. And certainly the Jets are not a strong opponent, but I think maybe the market might overvalue Pittsburgh a little bit here in this spot. taking the Jets at home. I can see that being a little bit of a sharp play. On as far as the total goes, the market's looking for the 38 to go over or the 38.5, depending on where you have it. 92% of the cash, and the tickets are about the same on the over side. So, I'm not sure how I feel from a DFS standpoint. I don't particularly love this game at all in any aspect. And the game only has to get to 40 to go over, which still doesn't make it a great DFS play. So, I don't know. I don't know if you could how deep you want to dig into this one, but I don't love a lot of this game here, Geek.
No, not a spot to find a lot of fantasy goodness. I guess you could look at the deep ball guys, maybe Deontay or Washington or Deontay Johnson. I guess if you want to get really silly for the millie, but realistically, 38.5 point spread, shitty teams, just bad offenses. I agree with you, Alan. I think if I was betting it, and I'm not, but if I was, I think the Jets side, just because Pittsburgh fucking sucks too. All they have going for them is a really good defense. That's really all they have going for them. Their defense has been excellent, but if a team could play conservative enough, what you're going to have is just low scoring crap because their defense is good, but their offense is shit. So I don't like it. I would not play anything. I don't even like the defenses in this game. But I mean, Pittsburgh defense has been so good scoring wise, and I think they're the most expensive on this entire slate. No, Ravens got them, but they're right up there as the second most expensive because
the Ravens are the most expensive.
Ravens are number one with Steelers coming in number two. I'm still not paying up for it. So no, there's literally nothing here. I would almost play the Jets defense over the Ravens defense in the spot, but they're not cheap enough to make it worth my while, at least on DraftKings in front of me. So it's a whole lot of nothing going on here for fantasy purposes. Move on. I would almost say I just don't think you need pieces. Like Crowder would be the best piece from the Jets because Pittsburgh pass rush, quick outs. It's not going to go to the deep guy. And just like last week versus the Ravens, but I don't play plays like that in the main slate when I have other choices.
One of the more interesting games on the slate this week from a matchup perspective is New Orleans is going to go into Tennessee. Tennessee's going to get the field goal at home, John. The total's 51 points. For just looking at that total alone, looks like it could be interesting for DFS. Talk to me first about what the bettors are doing. All of a sudden, I think I said it last week, that Tennessee is a team I'm interested in watching. They used to be like this boring team. I think that they're going to start garnering more and more interest, and that would surely translate over into the betting market.
Yeah, that was I was against them last week. I had Houston as one of the plays that we had over at Beat the Bookie, and that was a good one. They look like they had the game in hand early. Tennessee comes back on them, but they were able to hold them off. And then you've got the New Orleans. I mean, can they have had two different weeks back to back? Give up a ton of points and then threaten to basically shut out the Colts on Monday night. That defense just looked dominant on Monday night, coming off a game when they gave up like 500 yards to the 49ers. So just, when they say it's real hard to figure out this league, sometimes it really is. So my numbers would have this game a little, or not even a little, a lot lower scoring than the market has, which it makes me have to take a double take and see what am I missing here. But if we look at it from the betting standpoint on the New Orleans side, they are catching 67% of the money. The tickets are about the same at the -3 number. You could be getting this game at -2.5 as well in some places. And the total of 50.5 is about 50-50 as it would on the money. I've got that line a little bit lower than you have it there, 51. I've got 50.5 now and 50 in some spots. So the market is coming down to where I believe they were a little overpriced here on the total. I think this total needs to be a little bit lower than it is. So while I do think there's some interest here, obviously, whenever you've got New Orleans going from a DFS standpoint, I'd be leery. This isn't one of the games. This isn't my favorite game. It's certainly for a game stack, even though with the 50-point total.
Geek, a guy that me, I'm going to want to talk a lot about, and I'm curious on your thoughts, is AJ Brown. Every week he just gets better and better. It looks like a star already as a rookie. He's inside of my top 10 receivers this week, and from a season-long record, can we play him in DFS even with a little bit tougher defensive matchup? Is he one of those wide receivers that's going to transcend matchup already?
No, I think it's a little soon to be painting Brown as somebody who can transcend a matchup. We've never seen him, or we haven't seen him recently in a very tough matchup. It's very interesting because 13 targets last week against Houston, this guy hadn't done shit in terms of volume before that. It's amazing. 7, 4, 5. He did a lot with a little, but he finally got a lot of volume last week. It was just something that's fascinating, but he's going to have a little bit tougher coverage. Is he playable? Yes. Of course he's playable. More on FanDuel than DraftKings, which jacked up the salary heftily on him, but nonetheless, he's certainly playable. But I go back to what John said. This whole game is really interesting because, number one, the Saints defense matches up really well with the Tennessee offense. Saints defense, what do they do pretty well? They stop the run and they have an elite type of corner. Tennessee has a great running game and one elite pass catcher. And so there's a really good sort of negation matchup here going on with the Saints defense that just makes it's interesting to watch and to see how that's going to play out. Matchups don't mean that much, but it is interesting. There's things going on the other side of this game that are intriguing. For example, there's a lot of recency bias for both of these teams on the positive side, both coming off of monster days and all of that. So the recency bias is insane. Secondly, the Saints just don't play as well on the road. And I think it's a dome thing, but nonetheless, when they're outdoors, they just don't play as well. And it's an undeniable trend. Drew Brees does not have the same types of games on the road that he does at home. This goes back years. Again, John, noise? I don't know. What do we attribute it to? I don't know, but it's a thing. So yes, my first thought is, I want to load up on Drew Brees. He fucking killed it last week, and this is a 50-point game. But then I look at his road games this year, and it's like, Atlanta, 11 points. At Tampa, only 21. So at the Rams, he got hurt that game. Can't really, but half a point. He was getting killed up until that point. So he's just not been as good of a road quarterback, and it concerns me. Same thing with Michael Thomas. I play him every single week, but like Michael Thomas at home is a mortal lock. Like you always play him. It's been core. I don't know what to say more. My core play every week of the season pretty much, but certainly every week that he's been at home all season long, especially after we figured, even with Teddy Bridgewater, figured that Teddy Bridgewater was competent enough to get him the ball. I want to play Thomas this week, but I'm not as confident. The one thing, though, is Tennessee does not have elite cornerback play. So you would think, Thomas, good matchup. It's fine. It's fine. The only negative is he's not at home, and he does better at home, and that's something interesting. And Drew Brees plays better at home than on the road, and things like that. That's the only reasoning behind doing anything other than that. Could this be the game that Alvin Kamara finally has a big game after a whole season of disappointment? Maybe. You never know, but it seems unlikely. He hasn't done it. It could be. This could be it. But it's more of a hope than it is a something that I would expect with his 13 to 15 touches. He just never gets in the end zone. Same thing with Derrick Henry. I mean, you want to go back to Derrick Henry, but man, it's a pretty good defensive team against the run to be relying on a guy like Henry, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes he smashes this matchup and sometimes he doesn't. So a lot of mysteries here. I think, John, I agree with you. I think the high total is very enticing, but I do think there are more paths to maybe playing to the under than a lot of people are going to foresee this week. And it kind of gets me thinking about maybe just containing this game and not really spreading it into all of my lineups, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean that seems to make sense. That that you're tempering expectations. You're going to sprinkle a little, and you're not going to go all in. Because I see that a lot in the Slack. People say all in play. They ask you both. They say, "Is this an all in play?" So I think you're basically answering that question right now. John, next game is Giants at Washington. Washington is a slight favorite, 2.5 points, total 42. Is Daniel Jones going to be playing this game?
I believe he is practicing with the first team, so I would anticipate him playing.
Okay, so no Eli ability. I got you. All right.
Yeah, and I don't think it really affects the line all that much here. When I saw the news this morning with Jones playing with the first team. We still don't know officially. I'm going to go with Jones is playing again. I don't think it changes the line much. Maybe a point, but I don't think it changes much after we've now got to look at Jones, and he hasn't really been all that much better than Eli. I think they're fairly interchangeable from a betting line perspective. So we're getting another one that's crazy here. Washington is favored. We wouldn't have thought that a few weeks ago. They'd be favored against anybody, even at home, but they are here against the Giants, who've been fairly pitiful. And we've got 67% of the money, about 2-1, coming in on the Washington side. So even the public is starting to back Washington, which again, I didn't think I would see this year, especially with Haskins at the quarterback. When we look at the total of 42, money coming in on the over, 60-40 on the over side. I've got this game. It's at 42, and I have it exactly at 42 as well. And when I look at it, outside of Barkley, again, this is not a game that is terribly intriguing to me as well. Washington's played fairly well on defense. The quarterback still really hasn't impressed me at all, hasn't been able to do anything for Washington, Haskins. So I don't like a lot of their offensive pieces. Outside of Barkley, I'm not too excited in this game.
Yeah, I thought that Haskins looked a little better last week, and enough that if you're a Washington fan, you're not totally panicked. You don't feel like you need a quarterback next year, but that's neither here nor there. Geek, I'm assuming you're going to love Barkley. You're back in, but maybe that's where everybody's going. I'm curious what you're thinking on Barkley here.
Yeah, let's not make assumptions. Listen, the issue with Barkley, they jacked up the salary again.
Okay,
and he's coming in at a super elite price tag. And I get it. I know he had a good game, and that's awesome. But, I mean, he's got a lot of bad games, too. So, Danny Douche Dimes is back for the Giants this week. So, I don't know what that means. I don't know if it means, like, all the bad games under Barkley were under Danny Dimes. Why? I don't know.
Well, you know what it is that
could have been a coincidence.
I don't think so. I think that you made an interesting point there. Danny Dimes likes to throw down the field a lot. He doesn't do a lot of those checkdowns like Eli does, and I think those are correlated. Maybe Danny Dimes got to see Eli utilize him, and I mean that's why Douche Dimes took a lot of sacks, because he's holds the ball to a fault.
But I don't even know if that's the case. I mean, they had games when he got thrown to 8 times, 10 times. So I don't know what it is. I really don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. I don't. But it's been weird, and he hasn't done as well. I like Saquon Barkley, but for 8,300, second highest or third highest running back on the DraftKings slate, man, it's a lot. And if he, I mean, the second highest is even more ridiculous. But in Chris Carson, but he does a lot, so he's probably going to have a good game. Washington sucks against the run. Everything sets up well for Barkley. I like him, but I'm just not sure I want to lock him into my high dollar cash game lineup and absolutely trust that Barkley will get me 25 fantasy points in this game. Like, I mean, I think he's going to get there. I think he's got a good chance, but he's definitely not getting 10 catches every week, and that's kind of what I want at this salary level. So it's just a tricky one with Barkley. I am not locking him into all of my lineups. I like the play, but I'm not locking him in. Yes, Dwayne Haskins, as you said, he had a pretty good game last week. Will he have another good game? Can he do like what Sam Darnold did last year and just had a nice string of games to end the season out and, look good and make the team feel good about next year? Sure, it's possible. And if he's doing that, it's going to be all to Terry McLaurin. So that's an interesting play. Haskins to McLaurin, that's the only play in the passing game for the Redskins that I'd be interested in. I have a fleeting interest in Adrian Peterson in this game. I don't think I've played Adrian Peterson all year, not once, but he's been pretty good. So not a humble brag, but rather a kind of missed the boat brag. There's no Geis in the way. Peterson, 16 carries, got a touchdown last week, got you 20 points, or 18.1 for 4,400. He's up to 5K. Easier matchup against the Giants at home. It's a lot of things not to hate. I'm not going to say you have to like it, but you don't have to hate it about Adrian Peterson in this spot. Of course, yardage and touchdowns. Hasn't been a get 100 yards guy for most of the year. Does he have any 100-yard games? 1, 2, 2. We'll see. I think it could happen, but we'll see. On the Giants side, I don't know. With Dimes back, I guess you go back to Slayton. I'm not interested in it. I think there's too many guys on the Giants with Evan Ingram coming back. I have a problem with any of them outside of crazy game stacks. Not one of them is a safe bet for floor.
Fair enough. John, Detroit at Denver. Denver, it's a little bit of a misprint on the screen there. It's laying 6.5, correct?
Denver is, hold on, let me get you that.
Just want to make sure.
I'll get the exact line for you. But
Detroit going to Denver.
Yeah, it's up to 7 now.
Okay, let me change that on the screen for our video cast viewers. Total
it was 6.5. Yeah.
Okay. Total is 38.5. With Denver, I thought looked pretty good. I'm curious to see if Drew Lock can do better, not in a snow game, and see what happens from there. So what's Detroit being so bad I'm imagining that no one wants to bet on them.
No, nobody does. So 73% of the tickets coming in on Denver, but it's coming 27% of the tickets that would be on Detroit, but almost 50% of the money. So they're getting twice as much as far as bet sizes on the Detroit side of this game as opposed to Denver. That's a lot of points for a team like Denver, I think, to be laying in that spot. So I think you'll see some sharper guys come in there and just take a shot there. That a touchdown, two fairly weak teams, they'll take the points. If you're looking at the total 38, again, it's about 50-50 on the cash there. Not a ton of interest on that one. There's really not a lot of interest as far as bet-wise in this game at all, betting-wise. Again, it's probably going to be mostly the sharp money coming in on that game. I've got the game right at 42 as well. I'm not seeing anything that I don't particularly dislike the game, though. I think we've got some pieces that we might be able to play from a DFS standpoint. So this is not a game I'm totally going to toss out, even with the low total. I think there's some potential here.
All right, Geek, take us through. Where do you think that the fantasy gold is for DFS?
Yeah, I mean, normally 38.5 point total, and I just no thanks. But you're right, John. This game does have a little bit of fantasy appeal, mostly on the Denver side, but nonetheless, first of all, Detroit is the team where offenses get right against them defensively. Like, that's how bad that defense has been. Teams just get right against the Lions. And I'll point out that Jameis Winston with no weapons last week. No one. It's a bunch of ne'er-do-wells that I can't even know what. Rashard Perriman, like, they put up 400 and something yards. Like, it was crazy. So this Detroit defense, now they go on the road. And I get it, Drew Lock, hey, Drew Lock, baby. We've got Drew Lock. It's a cheap stack with Courtland Sutton. No one wants it. No one's doing it. No one likes it. I'm interested. I'll go back to Lindsey again. No one likes it. No one wants to. Too painful. Too hurtful.
People hold grudges, huh?
Yeah, it hurts me. You hurt me, Philip Lindsay, last week, and I hate you for it. But no, we have to forget. We have to move on. He cheated on us. That happens. It's probably our fault. Probably weren't doing something at home that caused it.
Whoa!
Not giving enough attention.
John, where are we going with this?
We didn't bring him flowers, and he did it. He did us like that. You got to go right back. He hit us. He beat me.
Oh my God!
I'd go right back to it.
Victim shaming, man. It's victim shaming.
I go right back to it. That's what I do. I'm a forgiving person. And so I'm forgiving. So I don't know where personal life. I don't know how that got mixed in. My apologies, but I like some pieces from this game. I like Courtland Sutton. He's just like your AJ Brown. He's a star on the rise. He got 10 targets last week. He got 7 targets the week before. He's a guy who they throw to a lot. Now you've got Detroit, who's terrible. So yes, I'm into that. I'll take a little Lindsey. I'll take a little Drew Lock. I'm not interested in the blow. I'm not interested in anything that goes on with the blow or any of that stuff. So it's really just the Denver side, and Denver defense, very good. As a matter of fact, possibly, and I know I've said this a couple of defenses, potentially the best defense on the board in terms of a play. I wish they were cheaper. I really do. I wish they were going to be under the radar, but yeah. Let me see what they are on. The most expensive. See, FanDuel got it right. FanDuel jacked him up to number 1. On DraftKings, you're getting him like defense 4, or 5 at 3,500. So not the most expensive. DraftKings priced it all the way up. They know what they're doing. So that's your play.
All right. So if there's nothing else that you want to say about that game, then
just that Phil Lindsay hurt me.
That's what I was waiting for
last week. He did me wrong.
Sounds like I caught the old Jerky Boys.
Right.
I can't.
He stepped on piss clams.
Yeah. I came out, my pants unbuttoned.
So it's so funny. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on the Jerky Boys. You know how much
I love that. Wait. I love that we're all about the same age, and we all know what the Jerky Boys is, because 99% of the world has no idea. And John just made a casual Jerky Boys mention, as if like everybody knows what that is.
I think there's a lot of people that know what the Jerky Boys is.
No, there aren't.
You
have to be a certain age. From like New York, add me if you know who they are.
No, tweet at us your favorite Jerky Boys line, okay?
All right,
at Fantasy Football Geek, at F Football Geek, at Statsational, at Alan Sislowski. Hit all 3 of us. Let us know your favorite Jerky Boys line, and we are curious. We'll the best responses we'll put on the show next week. All right, guys. Moving on from
we'll not just put them on the show. We will do those impressions on the show.
Yes. So moving on from Sal Rosenberg into Oakland. Oakland is going to go and visit. I put visit in air quotes. The LA Chargers home, which is they're going to lay 6.5, total 46. Now these are 2 teams that virtually have no shot to make the playoffs. So, John, how does betting get affected when there's 2 teams that may theoretically lose motivation? I know we talked about that ad nauseum, but does that get affected when 2 teams that virtually have no chance?
Not a ton. I think the public tends to look at some of these things a little differently. I'll give you an example, which is more frequent, is when one team has nothing to play for and one team does. The public just over bets the team that has something to play for, as if every time a team that has something to play for, they just win because, well, they're playing for something. What you underestimate is the other team, who's probably had nothing to play for all season, is actually pretty pumped up to play in a game where at least the other team needs something to play for. If you grew up in New York and you were a Met fan, it's like you root harder against the Yankees than you do for the Mets, because you don't want the other guy to be happy. Like, you're going to be miserable, but it'd be just make you feel better for the Yankee fans to be miserable as well. And that's
this is the greatest admission ever right here. It's so true. And we're all like, my happiness, like, I understand I'll be miserable as a Mets fan.
Company. Sure.
Yeah, but I just want you to be miserable too. That way, I feel like I've got people with me in my misery.
and I'm telling you, these teams, so it's often it's so overestimated in these games, in all sports. They're like, well, that team's playing for something against a team that's not playing for anything, and they just overbat the team that's playing for something, when this is the chance that the team not playing for anything has. This is their playoff. This is like, hey, this is great. We can knock these guys out of the playoffs, and that'll make our season. So, that I'd look more into. But when there's 2 teams out of it, there's no real good angle there. But other than the fact that, again, a lot of people just won't bet the game, so there's a lot less liquidity on that game. But back to the game and the betting aspect of it, really not a lot to report. It's really 50-50 on there. You could even get 7 on that game. I think you're showing it 6.5. You can get 7 in some spots as well. So if you are on the Oakland side, some outs do have that game as 7. And the 46 is now, I'm seeing 45 on that game. So it has dropped a point. It actually opened up at 47. So it keeps coming in. It keeps coming down lower, and the money is coming in on the under. So it's kind of coinciding with where the money's coming in. About 2-1, the money on the underside. Tickets also agree with that. The tickets, the amount of tickets that are being bet on the under. So people are betting the under. This game keeps dropping. And so you're getting a lot of points, a touchdown with a game that's right around the mid 40s here in total. Oakland's look pretty bad here. This team what if they lost now? I mean, this is a team that was 6-4. They could finish the season at 6-10, right? They're at 6-8 now?
It was always fool's gold with the
I mean, if they had Antonio Brown, I mean, they probably would be a lot more competitive.
Well, the thing is, when the record was good, my model had them pretty weak. So the model wasn't fooled by them. They haven't moved much. They've been in the bottom 10 teams in the league pretty much all year, even when they had the good record. So sometimes it doesn't always play out that way, but little by little, the model has like the top 10 teams are going to be just about all playoff teams, and that's usually the way it works. The one good thing on a week-to-week basis, if you're looking at that model, it's not always necessarily that you're going to be able to bet those games and say every time there's a difference in the in what I'm showing as the total and what the market is. Not saying all those are going to be good bets per se, but what you do want to look at it on a macro level and say, man, this is a team that at the time, let's say they were 6-4 or whatever their record was, 6 and I think they were even I forget, they jumped out pretty quick and they were looking really good and they were the talk. And but then look at the numbers. It's like maybe they're doing this. It's a little bit of fool's gold here. Why are they doing as well as they have? Similar to Dallas, right? So I have Dallas rated really high. If you look at Dallas, you compare them to teams that have much better records. Statistically, they have just been dominant. And then they go out. We had Dallas as a bet last week. Nobody wanted to play that, and I have a funny suspicion nobody chimed in. If Dallas would have lost, I would have heard about it from people saying, "Yeah, I knew it. I didn't play that Dallas game because I knew." Because that's what happens a lot of times when these games look really like you just don't have the guts to play it. And then when you're right, everyone wants to boast about it. But I think there's a lot of people that were really quiet, didn't play that Dallas game, and were shocked that Dallas looked like the best team in football on Sunday. Now, Dallas has that capability. Anyway, I'm going off on a long
actually
thing
that's
here.
That's not a long thing. That's important right there. Sometimes it basically comes down to trust the model, trust your player model. You identified the team that had the better players, and that it wasn't translating on the field. And that, listen, oftentimes when people they'll come back and quickly and tell you, I told you so. But when they're quiet, it means like, ooh, this guy got it right. So I think that's a very important point to stress.
Yeah, I think you just have to look at it on the total. And this is, again, I talk about it on the macro level. Oakland was just not as good as the record was. And again, in football, we are dealing with such small sample size. Even the season on the whole is a very small sample size. And so, the bounces of the balls, fumbles are generally very much luck-based. Interceptions, maybe not as much because your quarterback can dictate the interceptions. That's why you see the better quarterbacks outperform the numbers a lot of times. But fumbles, the ball bounces right for you one year, you're a 10-win team. It bounces wrong, you're a 6-win team. And it's a totally different perspective that everyone has on your franchise. But anyway, with that, there are some options, I think, in this game from a DFS standpoint. That Oakland defense, not very good. I think we're going to see some, we should see some yardage in the passing game here on the Charger side, Geek.
Yeah, I mean, I could totally see it. And the rushing side. The biggest challenge with the Chargers is always just they could run it. So, like, they might just do that. And that takes the ball out of Philip Rivers' hand, and it ends up, the scoring ends up going to the running back positions. So that's always the risk with any team that can run and has a lot of running backs. And I'm trying to bring up your model here. So the model shows not a lot of rushing yards for the Chargers, actually, but a lot of passing yards. So that's really interesting if you're following the model. 300 yards passing. That's one of the higher potential outputs on the entire main slate. That right behind Dallas as the top dog. So this is right up there on this main slate of games. And looking at the pieces from the Chargers, Mike Williams, man, he is coming alive. He is alive, right? Mike Williams, same mold as Cortland Sutton, same mold as AJ Brown. Big, athletic, angry, will rip the football out of the sky, contested catches, has speed. This is the prototypical, to me, this is the prototype for the future wide receiver in the NFL. Bigger guys, even bigger than like a DeAndre Hopkins type of person. Just look almost like a... Yes, I mean, these guys, Metcalf is almost like a step down, but the same size, body ratio type stuff going on. Not quite the the route runner that some of these other guys are. But this is the future of the NFL. And when you watch these guys, it's like, man, no matter what you throw, he's going up and getting it. And these little corners just can't stop it. So all that's lacking from Mike Williams is throw him the damn ball.
You know what's funny is like this was the prototype of NFL receiver with Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones as a rookie, and then it shifted over to the Antonio Brown types and DeAndre Hopkins, and now that the Tyreek Hill, right? And now what's happening is that the cornerbacks are adjusting again. They're drafting different types of corners, and then it's going back the other way. So I think it's cyclical in the NFL.
There was that. You're right. There was that thing where you started to get the bigger corners,
Andre Johnson, and then
and the Patriots guys who are bigger guys, and then and so the little guys were, but whatever it is. Yeah, Keyshawn. This is like Keyshawn Johnson style guys. Maybe not the fastest. I think Keyshawn was like a version of it, but that style of guy, go up and get it, very big, very fast. So anyway, I like Mike Williams. I don't like Keenan Allen. I'm over him, but Hunter Henry is always playable. I think, he plays that tight end position. So even if the ball's getting spread around a lot, he's always there. Austin Eckler, I haven't played him since Gordon came back. I'm not into that volume, but he certainly has delivered almost every single week. So mea culpa for not playing him, but I'm not getting on that bandwagon on week 16. Like, it's too late for me. But he's been all right. And on the flip side, the only player that's really interesting for me from the Ravens and from the Raiders, and of course, Fats Waller, fine. I like him. He's always good. And sure. But Josh Jacobs is out. He's out. Not playing. So
he is out.
He's out. He is out. They are shutting him down. So DeAndre Washington, who had a very, very nice game, the first time he got to be the starter. Not saying he's great, not saying he's special, but for 4K on DraftKings, 8K or whatever it is on Fantasy Draft, he got 7 targets against Tennessee, 6 receptions, got a bunch of carries. Not great, but he got a bunch of carries. This is a guy who we have to have some interest in. He's getting receptions. It didn't seem like they went to Jalen Richard on passing downs at all the last time he played. He got more catches than Josh Jacobs has had like in a game all season last week, just in that one game. So I'm interested in DeAndre Washington as a punt at running back, just because he's starting and he's cheap. And hey, I like cheap starters.
All right. Yeah, I mean, that seems to have covered it all. Those are two teams I'm going to be interested in next year to see how they progress, especially the Raiders. But it's basically all she wrote for this year. 2 more games, guys, on the main slate. This is a game that I'm certainly interested in. I know the public's going to be interested in this for obvious reasons. Dallas is going to go to Philly. Philly, they're getting 2.5 at home, total 46.5. John, take us through it.
All right, if I could find it. I hate when they don't have these games in order for me this week, but here we go. Yeah, this is a really popular game. I think it's the most popular game on the entire slate as far as bet by far. Yeah, tremendous. And whenever Dallas is in it, it's good for football. It's good for the NFL at least because there's always eyeballs on the set when Dallas is good. So this is going to be a huge game. Should do a really good rating, and just looking at the amount of bets. Like I said, I think they're more than double or just about double the next most bet game on the slate. So with that said, I don't think it's any shock here that the money's coming in on Dallas fairly heavily, 85% of it. Philly just has not looked good at all. And the injuries are piling up here on the Philly side offensively. They've just got nobody left. As far as the total, the under is being hammered at 80%. Clip. Just quickly looking at my number, I've actually got this as an over. I've got this game a little bit higher or a lot higher than the Vegas total. I've got it as a 50. I've got Dallas, as you mentioned before, as one of my better passing option teams this week. I just heard something about Dak having a sore shoulder or something, but I don't.
No, he's got a finger. It's nothing. Yeah, it's nothing. He had some blood under. Yeah. It's just nothing.
Yeah, I don't put too much weight into that. So if you're looking at that sort of thing, again, when you're looking at injury, I'll get asked a million times, what do you think about so and so's injury? Just like Winston last week. Now, I was short on that, and it wasn't really because of the injury, but I was just short on that game, and unfortunately, that went out. It bit me a little bit. But when people ask me about injuries, I always say just look at the line, like that. The line hasn't moved. Then the people in the know, the people who know a lot more about they have more information than you do. They are not moving. If they're not afraid to move if the guys in the sports book are not afraid to move the line on a player or on a team because their quarterback if there's word coming out that the quarterback's hurt or anything like that, and the line doesn't move, as soon as you hear that information, then don't put too much weight into that information. And you're going to come back to me. There's going to be a situation where a guy's going to play bad. I'm just telling you, I look at line movements, even if you're not betting, I look at line movements all the time. Just it's a lot easier in the NBA because a lot of times you look at a line and you go, because the NBA, we're always worried about who's starting, who's not starting. When you start to get comfortable with the lines and what the line should be with certain players in the game, you can look at the line and just from the line say, okay, well, where's the market? Do they think this player is going to play? That looks like a line. That looks like a Davis line, an Anthony Davis line. Okay, I'm going to play Anthony Davis tonight, even though he's questionable. And you can do that in the NFL here. So what I'm saying is, again, don't get too caught up when you start hearing these reports about injury and then the line doesn't move. If the line doesn't move, toss out any of the reports that you're hearing.
That's again, I love that line of logic. It's get comfortable with the lines. That's something we talk about on Beat the Bookie podcast, which people should find on the DFS Army feed as well. All those indicators and market indicators of what actions you could take based on line movement. Geek, take us through the key players in this one and who you're looking at in your DFS lineups.
Yeah, John, I'm on board with the model here, and this Dallas passing offense, like hell yeah, load them up. The Eagles in the last 2 weeks were burned by Darius Slayton for 2 massive long touchdowns. They got burned last week by Terry McLaurin for a massive long touchdown and a bunch of other receptions. Now, Dallas has a version of those guys, but better in Amari Cooper. So Cooper's been sort of kept in check the last few weeks. Tough matchups. He's not a guy who does well in tough matchups. He is a guy who does well in soft matchups. And that's what we've got here with the Eagles. Darby and all these crapola cornerbacks that they have on their team. So I finally think that Dallas will be able to style in the passing game, specifically the Dak to Cooper connection. Of course, Michael Gallup and Randall Cobb are in play to a lesser extent. But it is the other bonuses. The Eagles actually are pretty good against tight ends. It doesn't project to be one of these Jason Witten, vultures a couple of touchdowns game. And the Eagles aren't that bad against the run, which means that it probably, and listen, this isn't for sure Zeke is Zeke, but it probably doesn't project as like the greatest Zeke smash game ever. Now that said, I like Zeke as well in this spot. On the side of the Eagles, Dallas has been vulnerable to tight ends. The Eagles have a pretty good tight end in Zach Ertz. He's the only guy on their offense that's able to catch a pass for the most part right now. You've got Dallas Goedert, who, at some point, much like some of these other guys who burned me, Dallas Goedert hasn't burned me, but, I'm getting sick and tired of 8 to 12 points out of him. And, I'm just not going to get excited paying up for it in DFS over 4K. His work really just barely justifies the 4K salary. It doesn't tell me, he's going to smash through. Ward is the other player on the Eagles. Greg Ward. Man, it's going to be hard to pull that trigger, but he is coming off of 9 targets the last 2 weeks. Salary's up a little bit. He was min salary last week. He's up to 4,200 on DraftKings. But the most interesting player on the Eagles is Miles Sanders. He's coming off of the crazy game where what the Eagles kind of did last week was they knew they had nothing going on in the passing game. They have no wide receivers, so they finally, they kind of did what they've been doing, which is threw to him 6 times in the game. He got 50 yards. He got a passing touchdown. He also broke free for a rushing touchdown. Just had a big day overall. It was a breakout. Miles Sanders looked like a future stud. I don't know if that was a 1-week thing or if that's going to continue, but we only have 2 more weeks to play him, so we might as well get back on the train. He's reasonably priced across the industry. And again, I don't think that there are any must-play running backs on this entire slate of games. I think I'm going to be mixing and matching. I don't have a core player as of yet. So Miles Sanders will definitely be in my mix.
All right. I like that. I mean, Miles Sanders was our number 1 overall running back heading into the rookie season. We're going to stick by that. I know, Josh.
I just want to reiterate on that game, though, because I ended with the Miles Sanders emphasis, where I should say Dak to Cooper is one of my favorite stacks overall to build teams around this week as well. So that's a really key point. That's going to be one of my favorites. John, what do you think of the Dak Cooper combo?
I think Cooper's got the best matchup of any wide receiver this week. So I'm with you there. You know what's interesting? I saw stat today. Who's been a QB the most times of QB1 this year? And obviously Lamar.
Yeah,
Dak was 2, which is I don't think any shock, but Carson Wentz was like 4th or 5th on that list, believe it or not. Now he's probably been like late, he's been the lower end of QB1, but if you had him this year, you weren't thrilled. You thought you were getting more, but he has been.
But he wasn't the reason you lost. Carson Wentz was not the reason.
I mean, he had a very bad stretch of games where he was putting up between 12 to 15 points, and that was killing you at one point. But at 12, he's got I'll just read 12, 13, 15, 14, like 9. There was a very bad 12. There was a very bad stretch for him, but he's had some. Maybe he's squeaking his way in because he's got a lot of 22s and 23s, and that's probably what gets him into having been that bottom end QB1 for like not 8 weeks. But the other weeks were just really, really, really brutal because they were under 15, which is a killer score, I think, from a quarterback.
Absolutely. All right, guys.
That's a team killer when you get a 14 from your quarterback. Like you're fucked that week.
Yeah. No, you always. I think that wait on quarterback has been a conventional strategy in season-long fantasy, and I just don't think it's always applicable to every player. It's and that's something we're going to talk about a lot going into the offseason.
Last game, guy 5th overall, by the way. So I don't know.
Last game on the main slate, John. Arizona going into Seattle. Seattle laying 9.5. Total 50.5. Take me through it, please.
Yeah, the Cardinals actually catching a good chunk of the action here, 70% of the money, but 50% of the tickets. So they're actually catching, the higher ticket size as well. So that's really interesting because this does strike me as I'm a little surprised that the public would be on Arizona. They'd be on Seattle. So I would think the sharper side of this game is the Arizona side. I don't particularly like betting against Russell Wilson. I do think he outperforms more often than not. But if you're looking for a sharp side of the game, it probably is on the Arizona side. So the total of 50, the over is being bet 90% of the time. So or 90% of the money coming in on the over side of this game. I've got the game even higher than that. I'm looking at this as being one of the best offensive games of the day. Arizona just really doesn't stop anyone, doesn't stop teams much. We know there's the cheat code as far as tight end with Arizona, which is quite frankly, I've been shocked. We they were on that run earlier in the year, but it's just been, it's been a lot. I got to look at how often it's worked, but it's worked all but maybe like 2 games this year, if that. Where you would love to have the tight end, and Seattle likes to throw to the tight end as well. This could be a big one here. I think Seattle could put up a lot of points in this game, and Arizona is going to be able to hang with them. The Seattle defense is not that strong. Very stackable game here, Geek.
Those sneaky fuckers at DraftKings jacked up the price of Jacob Hollister to the point where it's going to be tough to play him in this spot. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, even against the cheat code. But yeah, I totally agree. I like this game. First of all, my boy Dreezy is involved with it. And anytime, it's funny. I was saying to myself, like, oh, well, I'm thinking about matchups. And is this the greatest on paper? And it's on the road. And I wish he was at home. Mm-hmm. And it's always nice to have your wide receiver, your running back favored, not necessarily loving him as a massive underdog. In the end of the day, there's 2 weeks left. So are they going to see what they have in David Johnson? No. I think they're going to keep feeding the Drees And that's a place where I want to go for salary cap relief and also just some running back excitement from a guy who's coming off of the game of a lifetime.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that they are trying to get out of David Johnson if they can't next year, certainly the year after, and they want to see if they need to draft a running back or if they could try to re-sign Drake. So I agree with you there.
There we go. There's lots of other goodness in this game, though, John, as you mentioned. So Chris Carson, massively jacked up in salary to the point where I will have a hard time pulling that trigger. He's not been a 30-point running back. They just don't use him in that way. I love that he's the only guy for his team. I love it. I love the matchup. He's at home. Everything points to great play for Carson. 8,500 on DraftKings for a guy who's not a super heavy passing game guy. A little tough pill to swallow. Not saying it's a bad play, just saying tough pill to swallow. I don't see him getting another 2 touchdowns here. Wilson likes to spread the ball around, so beware. Looks good on paper. Buyer beware. Russell Wilson. Game stacks. Kirk is the best guy for the Cardinals in terms of the passing game. I think it's Kirk and only Kirk. Really, you can't. Fitzgerald was a 1-week sort of retirement potential kind of situation last week. Now we go back to Christian Kirk is the best guy. On the Seattle side, it's Lockett and Metcalf. I mean, very stackable game stacks, teams, everything's in play around this game. I love it. I think it's a great spot. Obviously, Seattle at home is better, but if you're betting on Seattle, this is why let me explain why you game. Is this our last one? Can I have an extra?
Yeah, this is the last one. You got the floor.
Okay. Let me explain why you game stack. And this game is the perfect example of it. When you're watching this game, and let's say you have Russell Wilson, Lockett, and Metcalf. You triple stack that shit, but you only stack those 3 guys. What is the scenario in which they're doing well? It's if Arizona comes out and they have a great start. They're all of a sudden they're shocked the world. They're up 21-7, a quarter and a half into the game. If I have Wilson, I'm not tilting going, oh man, I should have fucking played Kyler Murray. I fucked up. No, I'm thinking, oh yeah, it's on, motherfucker, right? So everything that I'm waiting for is for the players on Arizona to score. I'm not even worried about Wilson. I know if Arizona's scoring, Wilson's coming, bringing him back. I know it. So I'm fucking rubbing my hand. Everybody's no, yes, right? I get excited. I want the opponent to score, so now I know my team has to catch up. It was the same thing that happened with the Broncos when they went to Houston, where I said, the only way that I really feel good about Houston is if the Broncos, because I'm not sure they can score. Then they come out and they put up 21. And now you got the throwing version of it. Now you might say, well, they lost the game. I don't give a fuck. I'm not here to worry about who wins or loses the game. All I know is I want my quarterback, especially a Russell Wilson, in comeback mode. So that's why we game stack, because if this team, Arizona, is doing its thing and all of a sudden comes out and shocks the world, 9.5-point underdogs, John's mom put them Seattle as her Survivor League pick, and she's fucking nervous. I'm like this, yeah, baby, because they're coming back, and that's going to mean points for Metcalf. That's going to be points for Lockett. That's going to be points for everybody. So that's why we game stack. Because think about yourself watching the game, and what are you hoping for? You're not I'm hoping for Arizona to score. You're not hoping for Seattle to score because you're like, fuck, if these guys get a 14-point lead early, it's going to go all Carson, right? The passing game will be shut down completely. So that's why we build our quarters on these game stacks. This is a perfect game for that example. Of course, the -9.5 means that Vegas doesn't think it'll stay close, but hey, game's got to play out. And if it's not close, I want pieces of both sides of this game. A lot of explosive players. Dreezy, of course. The easiest one would be like a Lockett or a Wilson, Lockett, or Metcalf with the Dreezy comeback, or with Kirk on a comeback. I might do Kyler, Kirk, Dreezy with like one of the Carson on the comeback, or one of these other guys. So a lot of interesting possibilities to build around this game.
Excellent, man. Well, we did it again, week 16. An hour and a half flies when I talk to you guys. I love listening to you. I know the fans do. I get tons that. This is literally the podcast where we get the most feedback, comments. People agree, they disagree. At the end of the day, we all come back as a community every week and discuss the main slate. And we're going to do it again next week, even though it's going to be a little bit of some players resting.
By the way, next week is the most important one, because what we will be doing is dissecting which games have people something to play for. Says is a master of figuring out when teams are going to rest somebody, bench him mid-game. You heard it here. Going to be benched mid-game. Like what? Yeah. You heard it here. Don't fuck with Luck in the preseason. There were so many times where you're like, no, don't fuck with that guy. Or he could be benched mid-game. Or this team might end up resting that guy. So definite master of that. That's awesome. We will have all of that ready for next week. Next week's going to be huge. I want to throw this out there for DFS Army members as well. Guys, this is a crazy week. We just broke down the main slate, right? But you're all still thinking, hey, wait, there's a full blast Saturday slate. This weekend Saturday slate is like Thanksgiving. It's awesome. It's a great one to mass multi-enter. And I've been thinking about how we're going to cover it. So here's what we're going to do. We've got a sheet being put out by Josh DFS Up North. He is a GPP GOAT. Takes bold stance. I love it. I will then combo a breakdown podcast with him, which I will then follow with a tutorial / breakdown podcast of me setting up the domination station optimizer and running lineups, showing kind of how to do it, running lineups for a 3-game slate so you guys can learn the technique of setting up the dom, setting up the optimizer to attack mass multi-entry in a 3-game or any kind of slate. I've gotten away from doing those the last couple of weeks just because of just the massive amount of content that I've been doing, and also because I've been focused on single entry contest, King of the Beach, and a couple other things where I wasn't MMEing those weeks necessarily. But getting back to it this week, we'll do a tutorial. We'll get excited. Maybe our domination station update will be ready by then, but even if it's not, it doesn't matter. Very little to do with that with the NFL side. So that is coming later on in the week. And for Solomon Ho, who's asking about Mahomes or Wilson, I would play Mahomes.
Well done. Hey, also, if you're watching this on the public feed and you're not already a DFS Army member, it's not too late in the season to join. Just go to DFS Army, use promo code GEEK, use promo code STATSational, or promo code SAYS. Either one. We'll all give you 20% off. We love you. That's how much. For life, not just for the month. And we have plenty of other sports. We do everything you could think of. We just heard John talking about soccer. The Geek is the master of MMA. He breaks down the
250K winners in NBA this week. 2 separate guys put in $4, took out 50K, different nights.
You're talking about members.
2 separate members, not staff, members. Wednesday and Thursday night of last week. That's how we're rolling. NBA is crushing. Both optimals crushed last night. Optimals in NBA have been cashing at a 60+% clip. And when I say cashing at a 60+, we're hitting cash games. And this is a tough year for cash games for most people. Very tough because everybody's using an optimizer. But even with that going, we've got a 60+% cash rate so far. Not promising that'll last the whole season, but hey, we're a month and a half in, and it's been pretty awesome. And just the NBA product has been spectacular. So get in there, check it out. All the sports are about to start back up again. You've got golf and on hiatus, coming right back in a couple of weeks. New Year's going to cross. So this is a really fun time for DFS. And the most serious people are here year-round, playing NBA, playing MMA, playing NASCAR, doing all the other sports that really DFS Army, I believe, is the undisputed king of, especially the niche sports where no one even comes close, because other sites, like I said, they don't bring a special expert for these things who's good at DFS. They just find anybody who's interested in the sport. And that's a little bit different of how we do it, because our guys are the top ranked guys in those sports that they cover.
Yeah. And then lastly, what I wanted to tell people is if you are even a casual sports bettor or one with experience, it doesn't matter. Come over and join us at Beat the Bookie. You can go onto DFS Army's website and click the Beat the Bookie tab on the upper right-hand corner. A full blown up site is coming soon, but for now we have all the content there. Join us there. Use code BTB, Beat the Bookie, BTB, and get 20% off that as well. John, tell the people a little bit about what they get over at Beat the Bookie, why they should join.
Well, I'll tell you, like you said, if you're new to betting, and even if you bet and you're a $5 or $10 bettor, we've got a lot of our subscribers that are just betting $5. We were just talking about one of the guys today started out as a $5 bettor. Now he's up to a $15 bettor, and you're going to say, oh wow, so what? That's $15 a bet. Well, tripling your bet size because of the amount of money that you've won and building up your bankroll, he's doing it really smartly. And to be able to do that over maybe 3 or 4 months, maybe not even that long, maybe since the start of the football season. So that's what we're trying to do is just give you a really smart way about gambling, a smart way about betting, how to do it, and how to build your bank over time. If it's just like anything else. When you've got the it's too good to be true story. I'm going to make you $1 million overnight. It's not going to happen. It's probably going to wind up costing you money. So if you're doing this with a real educated and you're taking a really smart look at how to do this, follow our guys. We've got Ryan over there. Anthony have been absolutely killing. If you look at Ryan, by the way, the college football bowl season is coming up. If you look at what Ryan's done with the college football,
I have his record.
College football in the season. If you have the record in front of you, I mean, it's insane.
He is winning at almost a 64% win rate against the spread. Not just picking.
Yeah, that's against the spreads. It's been absolutely. It's honestly, it's remarkable. Like if I wasn't watching, I would think it was a lie, but they're all true numbers. And
by the way, at some point, you're like, whenever I see it, I'm like, there's got to be a regression towards the mean. Like, it would just be normal for him to go 40% for the next 3 months, and that would just be great. Hey, you had a great year. But no, I mean, it just keeps going. Which is.
But by the way, that's not how regression necessarily always works, right? As you know, but just when people say this goes with any sort of betting, or we talk about fantasy football or whatever it is. If you start betting against something because it's happened, it's like flipping the coin. You could get 13, 14, 15 heads in a row. That doesn't mean that tails is about to even it up. Tails can even it up over a really long period of time. So you could go 50% over a really long period of time. So just starting to fade,
it's just like when you walk when you walk over to roulette and you see 7 or 8 blacks in a row.
There's a reason they do that. Because a lot of people think, well, how you can't flip 9 in a row. Well, you can, and it happens all the time. And regression doesn't mean we're getting 9 reds in a row coming in the next 20 spins. No, what it means is over the next 1,000 spins, we're going to be about 50-50. But in the short term here, we're hitting. But that said, with the model, the model's proven that it is successful. It's just speaking about Ryan's, and we've got NBA models, we've got NHL models. I've been doing really well with the NFL, and now the guys have been really clamoring for soccer. And as soon as I get off this podcast, and after I finish my NBA stuff for tonight, I will be I'll be posting some more soccer stuff. The soccer is fun because it's, of course, different time. We're on the different time zones, so we get to. If you're in an office, you get to sit there and sweat out. Like we had games from Greece this morning, so at 10 o'clock this morning we already had action. So if you're an action junkie, we've got it for you, man.
The difference between a degenerate and a professional gambler is just like if you win or lose at it. You know what I'm saying? That's it. So be a winner at it. Do it the smart way, and be a winner at it. That way you're not a degenerate.
You're going to get enough sharp bets that you don't need. You're not going to need any of your own action just because you need the action. There's plenty to go.
Yeah.
So check it out. Like I said, the smallest the players to the biggest the players. Everyone's benefiting over there, and I'm really happy to be a part of it.
And check out the Beat the Bookie podcast. We're going to go live again Friday at 10:30. Isn't that right, John?
Yeah, Friday 10:30. We'll come up with another, hopefully.
We have a great
podcast that people would be interested in.
And then if you haven't checked out any of our podcasts, go back on the DFS Army feed. We give you a whole bunch of Beat the Bookie podcasts, a lot of great topics. All right, guys, for the at Fantasy Football Geek, at FFootballGeek, you check him out on Twitter, tweet him. He'll if you're a DFS Army member, you know to get him in Slack, at Statsational, my friend. And I am at Alan Seslowski, a.k.a. Season Long Says. Good luck to everybody in Week 16, and I look forward to seeing you guys back here next week on Wednesday.